Is there probably a reason why you jumped into that topic specifically, into different aspects of collaboration? Maybe you have a story to share that triggered you to do that.
I do actually. I think that when I was when I first started in the workforce, and not in business analysis, just working alongside people within a business area, um, I used to get blindsided quite a lot by people's reactions on things. And so for me, I think collaboration for some people and relationships in general, building those within the workplace, for some people, they're just naturally good at it. They just have that capability. They've maybe learned it, as they've been growing up, and they're just natural. It's to them, it's an art. But for me, I didn't find that that was a natural thing. Um, and the more and more that we need it, especially in our BA work, I felt I had to apply some science to it. So I had to deliberately go and learn about some of these things to kind of understand what makes different people tick. And I looked into personality types that way and facilitating workshops, because obviously that's a big part of what we do, and looking at the science behind that and how to set goals and work together with people and how to build a workshop successfully, as well as just building relationships and of course the experience over time of just working as a BA with people for a long time. But yes, for me, it's not something that I naturally had good abilities on. But it's funny when I mention that to people now, they're always like, are you kidding? You must have it naturally. You're fine. And I always find that really funny because to me, it's just something that I've just constantly worked on. So that might be the reason why I suppose, specialized a bit more in talking about it and doing kind of sessions with different BAs in different companies and stuff, and project managers as well on those I suppose softer skills around collaboration. Because for me, it wasn't a natural thing, and I think for a lot of other people, it's not a natural thing either. They've just built it up over time. It feels more natural; it doesn't feel staged anymore to me. But it was techniques that I had to learn and an aspect of my abilities that I had to grow deliberately.
I see. Well, I sense there is some kind of story or maybe history for that, because yeah, I'm totally on board with the idea that it looks that the collaboration is in our veins, but many people actually need to learn that, because some are more extroverted, some are more introverted, and business analysts, when they join this profession, they not usually realize how much collaboration and communication is out there. And some extroverts that I had interviewed in the past, they were, so eager to communicate with people, and I thought that, yeah, cool, those people would be like spearheads in our department. But at some point, I sensed that they are tired of all of that collaboration, of speaking with people, because working with people is the most dangerous and the most tiring job, right? Any job with working with people.
Yeah, I mean it is hard to do, isn't it? Because it requires us to we have to pay attention for active listening, but we also have to like prepare what our next aspect is, because in analysis work you're constantly trying to attain a goal, so you want to work towards that goal, or you're trying to seek some information, and so you're thinking, okay, how does that fit into the context of everything that I know? What other questions am I going to have from that? So there's a lot of processing power going on whenever you're engaging with people, whether that's on a one-to-one or whether that's in a group session that you're running. It requires brain power, and so of course that's going to be draining. I find sometimes if I've run like a longer workshop or a half day like program of something or some training, that at the end of it I'm like, okay, I just need a break now. Because it drains your resources to have that constant activity going on in your brain. Yeah.
I don't know how people do those 8 hours of meetings daily. I did that, and I was completely drained by the end of the day. I hated everything and everyone, and yeah, that's too exhausting. Yeah, but anyway, we started talking about the collaboration, but we didn't give any definition. Like, probably new people will be watching this, new to business analysis or any profession, and they haven't heard about the collaboration, right? So, what's your definition for collaboration? How do you see it? How do you feel it?
So collaboration is working with any one or more people to try and achieve an objective or to achieve a goal, and working together in kind of a successful way. Um, And obviously there's various kind of aspects to that. There's like active communication. So we want to be doing active listening, and we're speaking, we want clear and open communication. There might be coordination. So it might be aligning goals, or coordination even between groups. We might kind of be the hub, and we might be collaborating with different stakeholders and helping them interact that way, or we might be kind of leading a workshop or leading a group in a piece of work, and so we're facilitating the collaboration between them, but we need to coordinate all those activities. And then we need cooperation between us and our other party, our other stakeholder, or coordination between them as a group, or us included potentially in that group. So just building, there's all sorts of aspects, but building that kind of respect and the working together and the trust between everybody, in order to get a positive working environment to collaborate.
That's a great definition, actually. Thank you. And I love how you added more than just one aspect. So you talked about cooperation, trust, communication, and we should explain why the collaboration is so crucial. I probably started doing that, but maybe you can build on top of that.
Yeah, well, the basics, I suppose, from a BA perspective, is that we want to gain understanding or work with our stakeholders for our requirements gathering work, and for looking for better outcomes. And we want continuous feedback from that. We want to, when we collaborate well, we have a good back and forth kind of communication with people and working on solutions together. But on top of that, if we have a successful collaboration, because there's unsuccessful, there's still collaboration, it's just not as successful as others. But when we have successful collaboration, we get things like buy-in and support. We get better decision making, because we get different perspectives. People are happy to join into the conversation, so we get better, more balanced decision making. We have a better understanding of risk management, because people are able to raise risks with us earlier. They feel free and open to do that. And we might be more efficient or more effective, because we would reduce things like duplication, for example, because of the open communication between people working together. So there wouldn't be two people going off doing different things. And of course, the big one, conflicts. So mitigating conflicts, and that's a biggie for people in collaboration, and resolving and identifying those early on, as early as possible, means that you're going to have more successful collaboration. Conflict isn't always bad. It's sometimes useful, but to collaborate successfully, you need to be able to work through it.
Actually, in my community and people who I worked with and people who I talked to, most of them usually dealt with the conflicts like with a bad thing, something, some kind of a disaster. But the definition of conflict is actually 2 points of views that are clashed, and they just trying to explain each other what other party tries to say and how they understand things. So basically, the conflict is a way to understand each other, to find the common ground. And the positive conflict, or constructive conflict, how they say, is something that actually helps building relationship. Because if everything is with the sugar on top and everybody is perfect, they are staying on the same place where they are. Right? It's like in a relationship, you cannot build a relationship without a pinch of conflict, or a lot of conflicts actually.
Yeah, Penny Pullen, who does a lot about facilitating workshops, and wrote the book Making Workshops Work. She talks about different types of conflict as well, and there are a number of different conflicts. I think it's four, but there's a lot of them that you can resolve within, say, a workshop session or as part of your work. The more difficult ones that we're probably referring to when we think of bad conflict is things like relationship conflict, where people like innately just don't get along with each other for whatever reason. There's a personality clash. They just don't like them. There's a history. There's something personal there. They're a difficult conflict. But things that are around the work that you're doing, you're trying to deliver something, some technological change or whatever it is with your BA work, and somebody doesn't fundamentally agree with this person, and they feel really strongly about it, that can be a good thing because an indicator that both parties care really strongly about the solution. You've got some real passionate individuals that want to resolve it. And so sometimes conflict can be a good thing, but it depends what type of conflict and in what setting and how it's allowed to manifest itself and how you manage it as well. So yeah, it's not always bad.
Exactly, and caring about something and trying to provide your thoughts and stay on your ground, like yeah, that's something that makes collaboration great. You know, I think at least. So basically, I've witnessed many conflicts in my life, positive, negative conflicts, and I've seen people, just almost fighting at some point. But when they left the room, they were like best friends because they understood how to put the conflict aside of personal relationships. So they were fighting against they were fighting about idea, but not
Yes.
against each other, and that's
Again,
probably what the positive
the
conflict is.
difference. Find conflict, even when it's about the task in hand rather than something personal, can find conflict easy or hard. Some people would really find that difficult in a workshop setting or in a work setting, and they might shy away from it. And part of our job, um, in a BA role within a workshop or a BA role working with individuals, is to try and recognize um, when that is a problem for people and when it's not a problem for people. And it's not wholly our job to do. Everybody has to have their own responsibility towards that. But particularly when we're running a workshop, we have to be really mindful that some people really find that difficult and that causes them quite a bit of negativity, and we can approach it in a different way and kind of take the heat off it a bit, and talk things through as kind of rational humans, if you like. So, but some people love it. Some people love that sparring, if you like, and that's fine in that setting for them.
Well, that's true. The more competitive area, for example, the more conflicts are there. The less competitive, the less conflicts, and both good and bad. So, what do you think is in the core of a good collaboration? What lies within? I know my answer, but I definitely want to hear one from you.
Do we take your answer first?
Okay, yeah, we could do that. Well, I've been doing a couple of speeches about that actually, and the different aspects. To me, the core of good collaboration is trust, right?
Mm.
So that's probably what should be the foundation. If people don't trust each other, they still could collaborate, of course. It could be like more mechanical or more contractual kind of collaboration.
Mm.
But I believe that the true collaboration could be achieved only if all parties or most of the parties trust each other. Because without that, there would be a lot of under the carpet fighting, intrigues, or something. And it's not that critical for smaller initiatives, but for large companies, for large businesses, for large projects, including like hundreds of people, that's very important. So my answer is a trust.
And I'm not surprised because that's what we spoke about at the conference, and it was your theme of your discussions with people. So and I do agree. Trust is really key to building up that relationship, because whenever we're working with anybody, it's not just trust that we're going to be honest, but it's trust that we're also an expert to some degree, and that we're capable of representing them as a business stakeholder, for example, or that we to somebody that we report into, that we're capable of delivering the work that we've said we're going to deliver, or that we're capable of facilitating this workshop, or that we're an expert in that particular thing that we're discussing with them. So all of that has to do with trust. It differs a little bit in long term and short term. So if you're collaborating with somebody in the short term, say you're walking into a brand new office that you've never been in before, and you're about to run a session with somebody, or you've just been brought onto a new project, you haven't worked with those stakeholders before, you don't know them very well, but you still need to achieve a goal. So you have a really short amount of time. So the trust is kind of a bit relative. Whereas when you're working over a long time with people kind of build up that trust in your capability and your experience over time by if they see that you understand something, you play back what they've said, and they've seen some of your output before, and gradually over time they see that you're capable and that you're working for them in a positive way. But over the short term, it's that trust is you have to kind of build it quite quickly. So you have to build the relationship. And one thing you can rely on as well is one of Robert Cialdini, the American psychologist. He wrote some books on influence and persuasion. And one of the principles of persuasion is to do with liking. So building up a relationship based on someone liking you can actually be a useful collaborative tool, especially in the short term. So it might be things like you are relaxed, you're chatting to them, you find out a bit about them, you find something that you've got in common with them, or you employ a bit of humor. That also can be really useful to building up the early beginnings of a relationship so that you can actually be collaborative very quickly.
True. I wonder if someone wrote a book about building trust, someone who doesn't like you, and building your collaboration and relationship specifically on that. You know how they say in movies, I don't trust them, that's why I hire them. Something like that.
Yeah, maybe they want the opposing opinion. Um, yeah, it's hard. There's always going to be stakeholders that you find tricky, that have sometimes have other agendas, or you don't get on with them personally. They're not just your sort of people that you naturally are drawn towards. So it can feel a bit harder to try and, like if you were just relying on a natural ability, it can be a bit harder. Um, and of course that's always going to be there, but you have to kind of employ some more deliberate skills in building a relationship with people.
By that, we actually naturally shifted to the next question I was going to discuss with you. So let's say there is a new business analyst on a project, or there is an aspiring business analyst who didn't have any projects yet, right? So they are joining that initiative, and let's say they are trying to build that relationship, trying to build that collaboration. So where would we start? Where would they start? What should they begin with?
Well, I come across this quite a bit because even though I'm not necessarily new as a BA, I do, being consultant, move from workplace to workplace fairly often, and so the entire suite of people that I'm going to be engaging with are new. Um, so find out first of all. I suppose, finding out who your stakeholders are going to be, who's going to be on your project. And you can do that by asking the individual who's assigned you the work, for example. If you've been there a while, then you might build a list of the people that you know are going to be working on it. But you want to then kind of build out from there. So you start making contact with your stakeholders, and you start building relationships with individuals and getting to know people on kind of I suppose, a less formal level when you're talking to them in the workplace. So start your meetings with conversation about what someone's done at the weekend. That sounds really obvious, and it is, because that's what relationships are based on. Having other people introduce you as well can be really useful, because you want to you kind of want to be shown as almost an authority figure. And I don't mean that an authority as in above everyone, but just that you know your stuff, or um, you're there with an ability. So, for example, even if you're just starting out as a BA, you might have your boss say, we're bringing on board this person in the project. They're going to be working as a BA with you. They've got terrific skills in this, this, and this, because they will have, because they've been hired for a reason, and the boss has seen something in them. Or it might be somebody that's already on the project. You might have previous experience on a similar project. You can mention that. If you have to introduce yourself that way, that's also good. But that can help build the trust, as in that you're capable with your stakeholder. But it's a two-way thing. You need to, engage with them and build a relationship. But that's the real early beginnings of building the relationship so that you can collaborate successfully. But that's really the starting point.
Thank you for sharing that. And specifically, I love the bit about the introductions. might seem like a trivial thing. It's just a new team member and they join in the team and they have been introduced. But it's a trivial thing when it's done trivially. The right boss, the great boss, would not just introduce but endorse the person, right? How you told
But
they should spotlight your skills, maybe something unique about yourself, maybe not only about your job but some your interests or hobbies. So because it makes the contact, it connects to people not only on a professional level but on a
yeah,
personal level. Yeah, so I'm on board with that. The great introduction is a great thing. Yeah, and those are probably strategies for initiating this collaboration, like starting to build it. Maybe you can share some strategies that are, good for long-term collaboration building. I can share one which I find very powerful. It's I kind of stole it from Simon Sinek. You probably heard about him.
okay,
Yeah, and he was saying that when you are sitting in the room and you are joining the meeting, and what we basically do, right, when we join the meeting, we go like this. Yeah, we're
hmm,
sitting in the meeting, then the meeting starts, we go, okay, I'm here, now I'm listening to you. And what she says, and I use this strategy, and it's actually powerful. Instead of sitting in your phone, you can ask a person who you probably know just a bit, hey, how are you doing? How's your family? Are they doing great? So what you've been doing lately? So it builds collaboration on a personal level. Next
great.
time when you talk to that person, they would already know that you're not only interested in them like in a professional way, but only you connect with them on a personal level.
And I guess in a similar vein, nobody likes the friend that only contacts you when they need something, right? So So it's about that. So we as BAs, we're constantly going and asking people for stuff. We go and ask them for information or a document to send through, or could you just review this thing for me? We're constantly asking. In fact, I feel often that I take too much, um, and you feel like you want to give something back because often our subject matter experts and our stakeholders are giving us time, their precious time usually, but relationships don't they don't thrive on one way someone taking. So it's useful to, as you say, do those regular connections, and not just at the start of a meeting, for example, but you find a you go and make that connection outside of that meeting. Give them an update if it feels more sensible to do, start a work discussion that way. And also things like showing someone appreciation for the help that they've given you and also for their expertise and knowledge. Like you can actually show somebody that you're grateful that they're on your project because of their abilities that they're bringing to the project and their expertise and even if you can be very specific as well. So if they um, give some advice on something or they share a bit of knowledge on something, then you can show you the appreciation for that and praise that ability. That's a great relationship builder, and that's not collaborate again. That's not collaboration as a whole, but that's the building the relationship to make collaboration successful. And if you're working in a group, so say yes, sometimes you're running workshops, but often that's with a group that you're going to be repeat working with over a project, bringing together that group in a similar way outside of that. So if you've got a social thing or even digitally bringing that group together, that's also really useful.
A collaboration, how it's described in the BA book, for example, and how it works on practice, the more junior business analysts, they uh, keep doing collaboration a little bit mechanically, right? So they need to follow some processes, they need to monitor stakeholders, they need to engage them, they need to keep the hand on the pulse, and so on. But the more you are shifting with your expertise, the more senior you become, I feel like that most of my job became not writing requirements, not following the processes, but managing collaboration between people. Because, the collaboration is not only a thing that I do with other people. Collaboration is also other people doing stuff with other people. And actually, when I started talking about that, I understood that people not always like catch this idea. It's not only me and them, it's also them versus them. And that's another part of collaboration which we need to manage, which we need to work with, and we need to monitor that part of collaboration as well.
Yeah, and we have allies in that, don't we? Depending on the setup, whether we're doing a project piece of work or some BAU, and also depending on the maturity of the BA function within an organization, the size of it, that sort of thing. But often, especially in larger organizations, we'll have a project manager, or some other role name that's kind of an oversight. So we can also work with that individual, collaborate with that individual on collaboration. So it doesn't have to be solely down to us to help manage all of the other relationships that might be taking on a bit more. Sometimes it is. We certainly within a specific, like a workshop or a group thing, or you're sitting down with a group to go through something, then yes, you want to help those individuals collaborate with each other. But generally across a project, across the entire timescale, it's not always down to us to do that, but we can work alongside the team to kind of foster that, to make that more positive. Of course we can.
True, and this neatly brings me to the next question, the collaboration monitoring. So there are stakeholders, they do something, you do something with them, you have workshops, interviews, you exchange some kind of requirements models, maybe you review them, you talk about the roadmaps, deadlines, budgeting, all sorts of things. And during that, we need to make sure that stakeholders are engaged, that there are no conflicts, that they are on board, they have the buy-in, right? We have their buy-in. So what would you probably suggest or share from experience how to make sure that everything's happening and it's going smoothly?
So I guess part of this is how do you measure or how do you monitor whether your collaboration's been successful? I um, I don't do this formally in terms of things like KPIs or measuring goals and things like that. It's for me anyway. I'm sure maybe some people that are listening do. Maybe they can write that on the chat and share how they monitor them. Because I'm sure in some organisations there probably is the formality around that sort of thing, and that's really useful. But I guess for for most BAs, they wouldn't sit down and work out what's my KPIs on this and start taking different metrics and things. But I guess generally it's like how what your conflict resolution is like. Whether if you've got a formal session, then by all means ask away for feedback on it. That's always useful. I always throw a bit of a word of caution of just asking for feedback in general, just as part of your working and how you're working with people. Sometimes that can cement something. If you feel like something's not going well and you ask for feedback, that can kind of cement the fact that it's not going so well. But certainly in sessions, that's really useful. And what people found worked well and didn't, especially if you're going to repeat the session or repeat the style of session, because then you can learn from that. But things like even, are you hitting your deliverables? Did you meet the goals and objectives the of the meeting that you had or of the piece of work that you're doing? So yeah, that output quality that you're getting as well from when you're having one-on-one sessions with people. Did you manage to get the quality output, the output that you wanted? Did you meet the goals, and did you get the quality? It's those things, but they're less measurable, and they're more just indicators that you can look for yourself.
I might add to that just simple signs of being not on board or being not engaged. For example, if people stop answering your emails, not returning your calls, or not present on meetings, it could be like something bad. It could be not that bad. They could just be
Busy.
Yeah, busy with something else, probably. But in many cases, people don't visit if they either don't understand the value or they are busy with something else which has more value. And they could be absent for good reasons, of course. Nothing bad should be maybe happening. But anyway, if the stakeholder is not present fully during collaboration, that's a bad sign, right? So you can do that. As soon as person stops returning your calls and not answering your emails, the collaboration level is going down, right? The engagement going down. And another thing that I probably uh, yeah, another thing that I saw is when the stakeholders start sending someone else instead of them, some representative of the stakeholder. This also shows me that they are busy with something else and may not be fully in the moment right now. So maybe you
And
encounter,
how Yuri, what do you do when you spot that starting? How do you then go and tackle that? What's your kind of go-to methods for that?
well, the easiest and the quickest thing that a junior probably will do is escalate. So they might ask someone above them to understand what's happening, that to include that stakeholder, but that's not uh, not the most elegant thing to do, because if you include someone from above, from the management or your boss, you show that you're probably not able to engage them by themselves, which is sometimes okay, but that shouldn't be your first go-to tool, So you may try contacting the person in other way. For example, if they're not returning your calls, you may write an email. If you're at the office, you may try going to their office, do a little
Yeah,
gamba walk, for example, or you may invite them for the coffee or for the lunch.
yeah,
Maybe in this
yeah.
setting they will be more tolerable to the information, and they will try to communicate with you. And sometimes it helps to get back stakeholder on track when you ask the question. So why haven't you been there? Is there something bad going? Is it not bringing any value to you? Do you understand the reason why we do that? And this simple question can provide you a lot of information, because we are not get used to asking our stakeholders about how they feel, probably even if it's from the client side, if they're happy, because some people are afraid to asking those questions because either they're not getting the truth right, or they may get some bad results for them, so they are not that eager to get feedback from the people.
All good things. Definitely going and trying to find a way through to your stakeholder is for sure the first step. An escalation, absolutely, and often the reason is a very sensible reason because they're too busy, and sending someone else can actually be a perfectly useful alternative. They might be sending someone who has got the capacity to help you and the knowledge to help you, so that actually can be a fine solution. Um, One of the things that is a useful tip is based on something called consistency. So if you're wanting somebody to attend your hour-long meeting every week and you're finding they're just not, get someone to buy into an hour or 2 hours or whatever it is. That actually is quite a big thing. It's a reasonable commitment of time. And as you say, showing someone the value, I have heard that plenty of times, and it is useful, but we don't always work on um, logical reasoning, especially when there's lots of competing priorities. Sometimes it's whoever's shouting the loudest. So one of the things you can use is consistency, and that is that you start small. So if you message somebody, say you've got Teams or other instant message, and you can get through to them that way, and put in a hi, can I have a chat with you for a couple of minutes? Literally 2 minutes. I find the number two is never good because people use that as a phrase, like, can I speak to you for 2 minutes? If you're very specific, hi, can I speak to you for 4 minutes? Why four? Why four? That's kind of useful, and it's a weird thing that I've employed. I'm a little bit like don't tell everyone, but I think we've just told everyone. Um, yeah, because 2 minutes or a few minutes is kind of a used phrase, or 5 minutes. But if you go for a funny number, that usually works. But you can even put an invite in someone's calendar, but not for half an hour, not even for 15 minutes. You can put them in for 10 minutes. It's weird, isn't it? We don't have to have an exact number. Um, create a small meeting in there. You'll be surprised that people will accept a small meeting, um, and stick to it. Be religious about sticking to it. Don't be running over and doing the whole hour that you wanted to speak to them for. Do the few minutes, go through, explain what you're trying to do. The next time that you ask for time, they're more likely, based on consistency, they're more likely to be consistent with the way they've acted before and give you more time. And actually, in that time, you can use that to build a relationship to help with your collaboration. So that's actually a useful thing, is start small. and then grow up from there. But yeah, absolutely, go and speak to them. If you've got the ability to get up and walk over to someone's desk, and we don't always have that luxury anymore because we're not always in the office like we used to be and working all locally to each other. But if you do, by all means, use that. But for sure, ping someone a Teams call, drop them a short email, ask for a short catch up. That's the best way forward.
I actually just realized that what I've been doing for past couple of years, probably, I've been setting the meeting, or I've been just writing in the chat to the person, like in the end of an hour, like 6 minutes, 7 minutes before the hour ends. Usually when people have a lot of meetings, they have their
Yeah,
events booked for the
finish
whole
early.
day. Yeah, but they finish early, exactly. And they have like 5 minutes to smoke or something, or have a cup of tea. And if you say, hey, let's go get some tea or some coffee, and they say, yeah, sure, why not? I've been doing that. I was going to do that anyway. So yeah, that
Yeah,
helps to tag along with people and be with them for a moment and
you don't have to
talk what you
smoke.
need.
You don't have to. You don't have to smoke with them, Yuri. It's fine.
Exactly. Yeah, you don't have to. Kids don't smoke. Continuing about the collaboration part, what, in your experience, what were the most effective techniques to use to manage stakeholder collaboration, to build it?
We're always given the power interest grid as BAs. So if you're watching this and you're relatively new, then I guess go and look that up. And it is really useful because thinking about the stakeholder, again, a stakeholder being anyone that's got any interest or influence over the project, working out which of those or a combination of those, whether it's a high influence because they're the sponsor or whether they've got a high interest because they're a user that's going to end up with this functionality that we're building or something, working out who your stakeholders are and where they sit on that power interest and where you want them to sit and whether they're engaged to the level that you want them engaged and how often and how to communicate with them that comes out of doing that little technique. That's actually a really useful technique to do. Sometimes we kind of forget about it because we just think, oh, we'll just work with people in a natural way. And that's fine. But there is real benefit in doing the power slash influence interest grid. But also I use quite a bit of gamification as well, not necessarily just in one-to-ones, probably less so in there, but in workshops. That can be really useful, making sure that we goal set in workshops. And my talk in this conference coming up is around kind of tailoring workshops. So analyzing the attendees that you've got, how they're going to work together, what type of personalities they're going to have, what you expect to happen between that group of attendees, so that you can design your workshop as best you can. Some of that's kind of a little bit more, takes a little bit more experience to do, but there are some tips out there, and making gamifying workshops helps you collaborate. Another one is when you goal set for a workshop, presenting an opportunity or a problem is a great way to focus people's collaboration. So if you have a problem statement, people love to collaborate around solving a problem because there's a specific thing that they're interested in rather than just talking around a subject. If you focus it on solving a problem together, that's also really useful. But we also have other techniques. So if we're working either side by side or working in a group, things like doing mind mapping together and doing fishbone diagrams, that sort of thing. There is a lot out there in facilitation and collaboration techniques. If we go and Google them, go and look them up, loads of BA resources around that.
Yeah, exactly. That's probably one of the most fully covered topics out there. What kind of collaboration techniques are out there and how to use them, running workshops, of course. I would like to add only one thing probably to that list, which I find amusing and great to work with some types of stakeholders. It's collaborative games. Now, when you stimulate teamwork or when you stimulate collaboration and you create this immersion into some situation. I found that it's not working for, of course, C-level stakeholders and that level because they don't have time to be immersed usually in that setting. But when you're working with end users, for example, or some stakeholders from not that high level, it's first allows them to live some situation, and you may observe how they collaborate, what they do, and it pulls them also out of their working day a bit. So it's
Mm-hmm.
also kind of a little gamification that allows them to rest for a moment. Yes, they're doing their job, they are collaborating on something, but they, don't do their routine at the moment. It's also kind of a rest for their mind. So
Yeah,
it works pretty well usually.
yeah, you're fortunate to find some space to do that as well. If you're able to do that sort of stuff, then that's great, and people usually enjoy that and engage with it really well.
Yeah, exactly. And well, it worked pretty well for me, like for years. I've been actually working with end users for 5 years for an in-house development, and probably the collaborative games and those workshops were the best techniques for me to engage them. Right, they were always busy with some stuff, but they also always found time for me to play some kind of game or simulate kind of situation. They loved it. Yeah, so probably
That's
that was my go-to technique.
and a useful resource for finding that kind of, because we sometimes when we talk about games, it's like, what do you, what do you mean? How do I invent one of those? That seems like hard work, but there's there's a book actually called Game Storming written by Dave Gray, but there's also a website, and a lot of the games are listed on there. You can even search by the type of game or what it is that you're trying to achieve, the goal that you're trying to achieve, and find games on there. And it lists out, the object of play and how you broken all down, how you play it, and that's really useful. I've used a number of those. There's a good one called Pre-Mortem for finding risks. So you think about the project in advance, and you kind of project all the ways that it could have died. The project didn't work. And from that, you can then work backwards and go, okay, well, if it died in that way, it could be because of these risks. And it's a really good way to find risks, but it's actually a bit more interesting than just sitting down and going, let's all think about risks. It's nicer to play a game. So that's a really good resource for people if they haven't really done too much in the game space, or if they want to find new games um, that they haven't come across. And get the word games, in fact, I think does put some people off because it sounds like we're just being a bit juvenile and we're not really doing proper work. But they're not. They're just different techniques of exploring, looking for solutions, being creative, that sort of thing. So it depends what you're doing, but that's a really useful resource at gamestorming.com.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm totally adding links later into the description.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a very useful tool. So I just Google them quickly. And you told that when people say games, they probably feel that we are juvenile and we're not doing proper work. But I'm reaching into psychology for a second, but you probably heard that everybody has their inner child. Let's say so.
Yeah.
There are no grown-ups. They are just old kids, how they say. So basically, we're all still kids, and reaching into that part is a powerful tool, in my opinion, because when you're appealing to the, let's say, grown-up, you appeal to logic, and when you appeal to the inner child, you appeal to emotions. And the best collaboration, the best relationships are built on emotions, on that emotional connection between people. So I'm totally on board with introducing some games,
It's
some
nice.
gamification, yeah, into the work, because that just help people click. Yeah, we just talked a lot about tools, about skills. You mentioned a lot. Thank you, and some even unconventional techniques. And so let's say we are using all that. We are building our relationship with stakeholders. We are building and monitoring collaboration. In your experience, which kind of challenges would probably an analyst meet while doing that?
I suppose being able to like read people. So especially initially, because when you meet someone face to face, you don't know what their goals are, their personality type, what they've just walked out of. You don't know any of that. So being able to kind of, and read people sounds a little bit wrong, but being able to kind of make some sensible predictions about what they're going to want, and what they're going to be like and how they're going to engage and that sort of thing. And just working with those and then adapting them, being flexible to it as you discover what that kind of individual is like. So yeah, having that first bit, that's always a challenge, isn't it? When you first come face to face with somebody, you don't know what their opinion of the change that you're about to embark on is going to be. So you have to kind of take that quite sensitively as well, often, and just go from there and build on it quite carefully. Um, Another common challenge is definitely people being busy. Um, they might want to wholly collaborate and work on this, but they just have other priorities to do, and they might be swamped. And that consistency principle that I talked about before, where you start small and build up like that, is probably the best way of working with busy people, trying to get small pieces of their time, as you say, the back end of meeting times and that sort of thing is really useful. Um, and using different communication methods, maybe. So, if somebody's busy through the day, they might be able to respond to emails when it suits them, and punctuated through the day, that might work better for them. Challenges within workshops, things like you have a really loud personality that takes over everything, or somebody who's really senior in amongst a lot of really junior people, and you get an inability for junior ones to really speak up and say what there's that kind of discomfort there that can stifle collaboration because people feel like they can't speak up and join in and give in the same way. And there's various solutions to that. This is the body of the topic that I'm going to be discussing in September. And there's various kind of techniques that we can do. So instead of maybe having an open to the room discussion, breaking off into groups where you're kind of isolating the louder personality or the senior person in amongst slightly more like-minded, and then having separate groups can help, as can things like silent brain writing. So everybody is contributing, and afterwards they can anonymously or otherwise share the output so that everybody gets kind of an equal ability to say things. So that there's different techniques like that, but there's lots more of those. They all, to kind of build up in workshops and react to those types of situations to make sure collaboration continues and you meet your goal successfully. But there's different challenges one to one and in workshops. But I think they're the common ones.
Yeah, exactly. And these are the types of challenges which you face when you are doing specific technique, right? So these are like objects, examples of collaboration, like instances. And if we go up to the strategic level, for example, the global project collaboration issues, or process collaboration issues, maybe you can share some story of the case you had to to show the problem, how it could be solved, something like this.
I suppose across like a wider group of people, sometimes you get, I suppose, more collaboration challenges because people are in different locations, and across an entire team, you have a project, for example, you would have lots of differing roles. So you might have kind of legal people and regulatory, compliance individuals that might be on a project, and there might be IT technical people, and then there might be business people and end users. There might be someone from finance, and then there's a senior person from the board, and you get like a real kind of difference, a real variety of people, and that can kind of bring about challenges. Those people don't normally necessarily speak to each other. They might not know each other very well, except that, oh, that person works in that department. They might not have worked with them on a project before. Compound that with, a different culture, being in different locations, doing different jobs, having different personality types, and you've just got a massively broad um, like space to cover really, and to try and get people to collaborate together. And it might be that you're working individually and being the person who does handoffs of finding information off one person and providing it elsewhere and that sort of thing. Or it might be that they're all in a big group, and you're trying to get people to work together within that group. But the way in which you build those types, those things, is to build the individual relationships and get to know the strengths, if you like, of each person that you're working with. So if you're working with a head of legal, you know, you want to build a relationship about that, back to the appreciation that we showed before. Appreciate the experience that you've got from that, um, and and when you get, you know, good legal advice into your project, that you're being grateful for that and that you're thankful for that, and you build that collaboration. And then equally, when you're working with, you know, somebody who's very technical in development, you recognize that that's the capability that they're bringing to the team, and being grateful for that and being appreciative and telling we don't tell each other enough, I don't think, that we are of the strengths that we see in other people. All of that stuff is great. And if you can do that, then when you bring people together, they trust you as somebody who's going to advocate for them within that group, because you know them, you've built that relationship with them. So they're all really useful, especially when everybody's all over the place and they don't already work together as a team. I think that's good. And be show your own vulnerabilities. You know, like, you don't get everything right, you know, and you're a human. So, you know, show that within the group, show that to individuals, and people are a lot more relaxed and about collaborating, and especially in front of people when you're also vulnerable.
Thank you for sharing that. I couldn't actually agree more. You've mentioned probably everything what was in my mind. And I just want to add that, you know, for me, I love going to the roots of things. I love root cause analysis a lot. And when I try to understand what are the biggest challenges for me, as for person, as for business analyst, to work with other people to collaborate, I went down very deep, and I understood that I should be a psychologist to work with people, you know, because when
Yeah.
working with people, you're working with their personalities, how they grew up, what were their relationship with their parents, you know, with their peers at the moment. Because I started seeing many things that, you know, look like patterns in people's, in people, how they react, what they do. And then I try to understand what psychology behind that, and I started seeing those emerging patterns. And for me, I'm you know, not very keen on doing that psychology on every person, on that
Yeah.
operation, but I understood that I have to do that to understand every single person, because interoperation between people what is important in collaboration. So yeah, probably that's the biggest challenge.
I certainly don't have those expertise, I'm afraid, Yuri. I'm just I'm just a Padawan by comparison. It's interesting you say about the psychology, because there's obviously the different personality types, and you can actually test for those, can't you? You can do things like there's 16personalities.com, which is built on kind of the Myers-Briggs personality test. And it is actually quite fun to do the test, and a lot of people do. And the amount of times that I've said to people that I've been working with, why don't you do the 16 personalities test? It's really good. And then tell me what it is, because it's really, like, it's useful. And I'm fully open about it. It's really useful for me working with you to kind of understand where you're coming from. And I keep a note of people of people's personality types, both in personal life and in professional. And it is actually useful because you can see it has things like their motivations and what they want to be appreciative, appreciated for, and kind of what they enjoy about a job as well. Sometimes they like the creative aspects, sometimes they like the people aspects, and you can, all of those things are really useful information for you that you can employ as you're interacting with people.
Based on all of what we discussed, if you would put down all that we discussed into a couple of advice, or maybe one advice to aspiring business analysts, to practicing business analysts, what are your lessons learned, like the key aspects of collaboration that you would like to highlight for people?
I think that for me it wasn't necessarily a natural thing to just be good at collaboration. So if you're not already brilliant at collaboration, or you find that there's sometimes you don't quite meet your objectives, things go a bit off piste, or you get some conflict or that sort of thing, then we can improve at those things, because we can look into the soft skills around building better relationships with people, and we can look at collaborative facilitation kind of techniques, and how to build better workshops and how to work with people better one-on-one. So there's things that we can do to kind of improve those. If you're in a particular position where you're maybe struggling with engaging stakeholders and collaborating with them, then just take a step back and take stock of where you're at. If it's something like you get in conflict, then analyze it, make a plan, get a plan of action, build on your skills. If it's something like a lack of results, or not meeting your objectives or goals or whatever, then go away and build up your skills for help. So just kind of take a pause and do a bit of an assessment of where you're up to, and then take it forward. There's obviously a number of resources there that we've already mentioned, but the internet's full of this help with these type of soft skills now.
Exactly. I'm on board with the idea that if you're bad with collaboration, if you're bad with connecting to people, that's a trainable skill. And that's a great thing, because some people think that, okay, I'm bad with that, I will try another job. No, you shouldn't. You should keep trying. You should keep making mistakes. People are very, very forgiving